Alright, it is time for us to create a snowman card. I have a hot press watercolor paper card. It just came pre-scored so it'd be easier to fold and use as a card. It also came with an envelope. And I'm taping down the edges all about the same width of tape overlapping the paper to make sure it is stuck to the table and I can do a nice wash for a background behind my snowman. Whatever kind of tape you're using is fine as long as it is removable. So I'm using a Green Frog painter's tape. It's just a brand I've found that seems to peel off pretty easily. It is linked in my recommended supplies and Amazon storefront. You can find that in the description below. Now, first things first, we're going to draw our snowman. Every snowman is unique. It starts with just some circles kind of overlapping. I like to make the head in front of the rest. It makes it look like it's actually sitting on top of the other snowman, and then make slightly larger round shapes as it goes down. For the stick arms, I like to make them kind of bendy and unexact so they look more realistic. When I draw them, I also like to make sure they're a shape so I can color in. For the top hat, I want the top hat to kind of sit on the snowman's head and not float above it, so that's why I put it kind of over the top of the head and then erase the head that is inside the top hat. Of course, a little band across it is nice too. Now that I've done that general sketch, I can actually go over it and make a nice neat outline. This is the more careful part where I want to be more exact and be nice and neat since I can't erase my permanent pen. But of course, if I do make a mistake, I can turn a mistake into a masterpiece because that's what we do here. And we are okay with mistakes because everybody makes those mistakes and it's just part of life. So go ahead and trace over deciding where you want things. If you want an arm to be behind the body, then you make it stick out like this. The other arm, this one is actually in front of the body. That's why it goes across the circle. And then I like to make the bottom of the circle of the body like have a flat edge so it looks like it's really sitting on the mound of snow. Now I didn't draw the face with pencil because I felt confident enough to draw it right with pen. You could always use a pencil first and outline afterwards. Notice on that carrot nose I did a curved line at the end of the triangle that makes it look a little bit more realistic. I also curved the buttons to make it look like they're sitting on a curved round body. Here comes the scarf, just curved across the body pretty simply, and then I'll create some parallel wiggly lines to make those parts of the scarf hang down just like they're tied around the snowman's neck. Before we paint, it's time to erase the pencil lines to make sure we just have our Sharpie lines or permanent marker, permanent pen lines, whatever they're called, and that'll make our drawing look nice and neat. If you forget to erase, you might have some pencil lines showing through your watercolor. Not the end of the world, but for this style, I like to make sure my pen is nice and neat before I paint so that I can do that erasing ahead of time. Now it's finally time to paint our snowman. I'm going to make a night sky for this snowman because it's easier to see the white of the snowman's snow if there's a background. So it could be a sunset background, it could even be a daytime background, but a nighttime background creates some fun interest since, I don't know, it's nice and dark and contrasts the white of the snow of the snowman. I'm using a dark indigo blue. This will really layer nicely and look like a night sky. I'm being very careful to paint around my snowman for the most part. You can see I've already gotten some paint onto the top hat, but oh well, that's okay. But the snow of the snowman is more particular about making sure I don't get paint on it because I want the snow to stay white. I will be adding a shadow to the snow later, and there are ways to kind of fudge and fix if the paint goes over it, but for the most part, I want my sky to stay behind my snowman. One of the tips I could give you when it comes to brush control is look how I'm using the tip of my brush to follow the shape of the snowman's body. And this way, I can actually pay attention to where the paint ends. Versus on the other side of my snowman, I was kind of having to be extra careful because the tip of my brush was pointing away from the snowman, where on this side, my paintbrush is actually pointing at the snowman. This gives me more control over where the paint actually ends when it runs into the snowman. Now you can solve this problem by taping your painting to a board instead of the table, and that way you can still rotate it while you're painting, but that is something I just didn't do, so I had to be more careful when painting around my snowman. I also like to make the outer edges a little darker than the center, It just kind of creates a fun glowing and importance effect. It makes it look like my snowman is the most important part of my picture by focusing the highlight of the background on him, and then still creating some interesting, really nice dark spaces around the edges of the background. Now it is time to go ahead and dry this before we paint the body of our snowman or any details to make sure that everything doesn't bleed and blend together when we don't want it to. Now it is time to add the shadow to our snowman. We're using a more bright cerulean blue to follow the edge of the snowman, picking one side for the shadow. If you ended up having some of that darker blue over the side, all you have to do is kind of gently work it away with your paintbrush while your paintbrush is wet, and then replace it with the color we're going to put on top. Then I also want a little bit of shadow underneath each of the balls of snow, and then I'm just going to slowly fade those shadows out with a wet, clean brush and fresh water, pulling those shadows kind of across the snowman while making sure they stay darkest on the left to make it actually look like a shadow and not like I'm turning all the snow blue. Then pay attention to where that shadow would be on the ground, and also kind of fading that into the snowy area around the snowman. Don't forget the head. Make a nice curved line both at the under the hat and kind of around the side of it. So underneath each area where there's an overhang, like under the scarf, under each circle of snow, under the scarf arm things, each of those things needs a shadow with that same blue. Make sure to blend and fade it away, again by using a clean brush to kind of blur and move it across the body of the snowman. This will also help avoid any straight, harsh edges, but instead make that blue fade away by using the water to move it across the body of the snowman, but avoiding details like the scarf as much as you can. Details like buttons and things can be covered up if they do end up with some blue on them. It's no big deal because you can always make it darker. Remember, you can always go darker, but it's harder to go lighter. So starting with light layers and adding dark on top. Now that the snowman has snow, we can also go and decorate and paint all the different details like the top hat, scarf, eyes, carrot nose, everything like that. You can really pick any color. Of course, for a top hat, black makes sense, so that's what I'm going for. I have some brown paint in my black paint area, so it's kind of a more brown-black. That's okay with me. I'm not too picky about it. I will try to make kind of the edge of the hat on the left be a little darker than the right to follow that shadow effect that I created on the body of my snowman, but I'm not feeling too picky about it since this is just part of the decoration. Don't forget the rim of the hat at the bottom underneath where that stripe is, making sure that is the same black as the top of the top hat, and that'll make everything fit together nice and neatly. Really paying attention to where that blue overlapped, kind of working that out with a wet brush or with a brush that has my next color on top. Since I have a pointy small brush, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the eye coal and the coal for the mouth. If yours was really small or you didn't feel like you had a steady enough hand, you could also use your pen to just color those in all the way, even before painting, or you could at the end as well, but make sure you're drawing on a dry paper if you choose to use a pen. Here I've got my pointy brush, so I'm making it more pointy. Now I am working on making a brown for the stick arms. I do want this brown to be dark enough to cover up the blue background without turning completely black. So I've mixed a little bit of black and brown together to fill in, once again using my really thin brush to fit that paint inside the lines for the stick arms. We are almost done. We've got a few details left with our carrot nose, our scarf, and the stripe on our hat. If you have a theme in mind for your colors, you can start mixing up those colors. I am thinking of Christmas. Recently got done celebrating that holiday, and I think some red and green could be a fun accent to my snowman, so I've mixed up some red. I did put a little bit of brown in my red because I really enjoy muting my colors a little bit to make them less vibrant. Might also help since it's nighttime, the colors shouldn't be so bright. It helps them look a little bit more muted or neutralized, and then they fit in really nice. So I decided to skip the green and just match my hat to the scarf for a nice red complement to the black top hat. Once again, trying to make a little bit of a shadow on the left to again allude to that 3D nature of my snowman. So making the paint more opaque or more milky will create more of a shadow look. Same with these hanging down parts of the scarf. If I make the one in the background a little darker, Then it will look like it is behind the other part of the scarf and feel more realistic in that way. The scarf is our last decoration detail. I'm really trying to be careful to stay inside the lines that I drew for it, but I'm not perfect. I do think I got a little bit out of it. Oh well, no big deal. It's fun to have the paint be a little looser, and it can look really neat even if things are getting outside the lines. For the carrot nose, I'm taking some fresh yellow and I'm mixing it in some of the red I used for the scarf and hat, and I'm using that orange then to fill in the carrot nose. It's a really small area, so once again I'm using my really pointy, narrow brush to make sure I can do my best to stay inside the lines, but I'm not perfect, and that's okay. One of my favorite parts of this painting is using the white pen to add either stars or snow. It can really be whatever you want it to be, but it's all over the dark blue sky behind the snowman. If it's stars, it should only be on the blue. If you decide to make it snowflakes falling, then it could also go onto your snowman and in front of the snowman, onto the hat, the scarf, things like that to really make it feel like your snowman is amongst the snowflakes. So either stars in the background or some snowflakes falling down. This is a very fun detail to add at the end. I decided to make mine snow, so here I am putting it on top of the snowball of the body as well and the hat to make it really look like it is flurrying outside. I wish I had snow outside right now. I live in Minnesota. It's very cold and usually snowy this time of year, and yet here we are with no snow and I'm slightly miserable, but it's fine. I'm also using the white pen to add little highlights to spots I wish I had. So maybe on the carrot nose, you could put little dots in the eyes, different things to make them feel and look shiny and cute, and just add more contrast with that bright white, which we don't always get when we're painting with watercolor. And last but not least is the satisfying tape peel. While I go ahead and peel this off, I just wanted to say thank you for stopping by and watching this with me. I hope you were painting along, and if not, I hope you do soon. Snowmen are super fun, cute, and easy way to find something fun to do when it's snowy and cold outside, or if you're like me and you're dreaming of snow. I hope you liked this video. Subscribe to my channel for more other fun videos and tutorials, and I will see you next time with the next painting. Happy painting!